Okay, so we are pretty much right on schedule. We're just a tad early, which is always good, so you can take a bathroom break. But right now, it's time for our breakout sessions at 9 o'clock prompt. We have sessions that are in your program. We have salons A, B, C, and D that are right outside the doors and labeled appropriately. So in Salon A, we have community college pathways to STEM degrees, challenges and opportunities to broadening participation. And then in Salon B, we have developing and leveraging resources to sustain undergraduate research initiatives at your university. And in Salon C, defining STEM majors in community colleges for WebAMP reporting, guidelines, and recommendations for practice. And Salon D, the trajectory of aspiring African American engineers and computer scientists, a mixed methods understanding of success. So with that, if you have any questions, I'm up here. You can ask me. And with that, enjoy the rest of your morning. Oh, oh yeah. And then, right, thank you for clarifying that. We do have the student breakout sessions also from 9 to 10. From the classroom to the community, how minority STEM students impact the world. All right, and so we do have breakout sessions from 10:15 to 11:15 a.m. in the same salons. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. All right. May I please have everyone's attention? All right. So I want you to continue to enjoy your lunch because nutrition is very important for the body. But I did want to get the program started for the afternoon. And on your program, it actually indicates that Dr. Farini Mundy is supposed to give the keynote, but due to the government shutdown and just the formalities, she was not able to make it. So we actually have a wonderful replacement. I've been very privileged to meet Dr. Flores. And so he is going to come up and give a talk, but before I introduce him, I would like to just go through some more logistics. So remember, right after lunch, you are to catch the shuttle out and be out there at 12:45 because the buses or the shuttles will leave at 12:50. And also, when you come back, just keep in mind that the student posters will be presented right outside the doors in the area. So we really encourage you to go out there and support our students. So with that, I would like to introduce Dr. Flores. And he will be giving, well, let me give his bio first. So Dr. Flores is the Dean of Graduate School at the University of Texas, El Paso, and he earned his PhD in electrical engineering from Arizona State University. Dr. Flores is an expert in retention strategies for non-traditional undergraduate and graduate STEM students. Since 2005, he has directed the UT System Louis Dose Alliance for minority participation. He is also okay, lost my place. He's also the director of the University of Texas El Paso Puentes program, promoting post-baccalaureate opportunities for Hispanic Americans. In 2010, Dr. Flores was recognized by President Barack Obama with the Presidential Award for Excellence in Science, Mathematics, and Engineering Mentorship. So that's quite an honor. So it is with tremendous pleasure that I introduce Dr. Flores as he talks about commitment to broadening participation, linking demographic changes and access to STEM education. And even though it is not in the program, you can go to our website to get more information and the abstract. So with that, I invite Dr. Flores.
Good afternoon. Buenas tardes. Very good. My name is Benjamin Flores. I am the Dean of the Graduate School at the University of Texas El Paso and also the Director of the UT System LSMCE program. And I had to say this is a great pleasure for me to be here. I want to thank Dr. Guyen and Dr. Jones for giving me the opportunity to talk to you about something that is close and dear to my heart. It is not radar signal processing. It does have to do with the demographic changes and access to STEM education. Disclaimer, I'm not for any Monday. I'm the guy on that picture. All right, very good. This is a brief outline of my presentation. First of all, I'd like to spend some time talking about the demographics of the United States and take a look also what's happening in my state of Texas. Also, I will be spending some time looking at the issues of change, preparing for change as the population demographic in the United States changes, and looking at the issue of democratization of higher education, as well as metrics for success, and ultimately just to have a brief conversation about whether education does indeed pay. In Texas, the demographic has been changing significantly, and it has been clustering in what we call the Texas Triangle. That is where our majority of white African American and Asian Americans are living nowadays. The Hispanic population is generally increasing throughout the state, and the institutions of higher education have a mandate to prepare to deal with these changes, including what we call closing the gap in academic performance. This is a map of Texas, as you may recognize. You're going to see several of these maps, so I'm going to give you the code for deciphering this. Red means a decline in the population of a particular ethnic or racial group, and blue means growth. You may also see pink. Don't worry about that. There's a special issue there, and we don't have to worry about that. But what you can see here from this map, based on the comparison of the population between 2000 and 2010, you can see that the large majority of the white population now is clustering in three general areas. What's the Houston area, what we call North Texas, that includes Dallas, Arlington, Fort Worth, and the other area, which is in Austin and San Antonio. Now, this is what is happening to the black population. You can see again, blue is growth, red is decline, and the areas where you don't see much of a change is in pink. This is what has been happening with the Asian population. As you can see again, the triangle of Texas becomes very prominent, and you see the majority of the Asian population clustering in those areas. Now, prepare for the next one. This is what has been happening in the last 10 years with the population of Hispanics. So you see that essentially all of the counties in Texas have been increasing the Hispanic population, except for some counties that are considered rural Texas. So essentially, the population in Texas is changing significantly. Most of the individuals that are counted here that account for the growth are young people. And one of the questions is how are we going to educate these individuals? So the percent of population in poverty in Texas is shown in this chart. One of the things that you can see is that approximately 1 in 11 white non-Hispanics live in poverty versus a whopping 26.8 of Hispanics and 24.7 of African Americans. The percentages are with respect to the population. Okay, so when we say 26.8, that means that 26.8 of all Hispanics live in poverty. You can also look at what's happening to the median household income, and essentially the Asian American population leads in that area, closely followed by the whites, but you can clearly notice that as far as the Hispanics and Blacks population, we are lagging behind, and that's something that's going to have a significant impact in the future of Texas. The data is clearly from the U.S. Census Bureau. Now, when you look at how the median income is distributed throughout Texas, you will find that in the triangle area, what's considered the Metroplex, Central, and Gulf Coast, the median income is quite significantly high with respect to everything else, and the bar in orange is representative of the area where I live. So we tend to have a much lower income population in that area, and it's definitely much lower than the state average. Looking specifically at the demographics of the El Paso region, you can see that the population in 2010 accounts for about 2.5 million people. Approximately 36% of those individuals live in El Paso, in the El Paso area, and the rest of them live across the border. So Ciudad Juarez, Chihuahua is definitely the larger of the two sister cities that are joined by a bridge and several bridges and a river. So the per capita income that you would imagine for Texas is $25,000. For the United States is higher than that, and for the El Paso region is 18,000. Now, why do I bring this up? Well, the reason I'd like to mention this is that essentially this is the population that we serve. The University of Texas El Paso is committed to serving the region, and it is crucial for us to understand where our students are coming from and what their socioeconomic status is, because much of that will influence, as you can imagine, the success that they will have in earning their baccalaureate degrees. Now, as far as educational attainment is concerned for the population age 25 and over in Texas, what we find out is that non-Hispanic whites tend to earn their bachelor's degree at a rate of about 34%. Comparison with that, Hispanics is 11.6, so there is tremendous underrepresentation in that area. African Americans do 19.7. The Asian American population is doing very well in this area, at 52%, and others are at 20.8. So we have a significant challenge in getting our students through the higher education system, at least to get baccalaureate degrees. You can see what's happening with high school diplomas. You know, also we see for the Hispanic population a significant issue in that 40.4% of our Hispanic students are not getting a high school diploma. And that is really a problem. Now, I just showed you a chart where we are seeing the most growth in our demographic, in our population demographic. And we had to make it imperative for us to ensure that these individuals get a high school diploma and that they consider themselves at least, they consider the possibility of getting a college degree or some college education. So we have a trend that is also observed nationwide, and this is rather problematic. So what's happening in the United States, of course, that's the next question. And I'm going to ask you to try to identify your county. So this is the population. This is the population of non-Hispanic white, and this is a change, whether there's growth. Growth is, again, blue, orange, red is decline. And you can see the Texas triangle that I talked about before. Okay, so that is what happens, what's happened with the white population. This is for the black population between 2000 and 2010. You see a lot of growth in some areas and very little representation in a large corridor, which is probably the tornado corridor, but that's where it is. Okay. So we have that chart. So were you able to see your county? Yes? All right, good. This is the Asian population, and it is distributed on both sides of the country as well. There has been significant growth in that particular social group, and this is what's happening with the Hispanic population. Okay, that's exactly the same thing I said when I saw this plot. Okay, I'm not the owner of this data. The data came from Dr. Murdoch from the University of Rice. He has a center that is dedicated to studying the socioeconomics of Texas. But you can see that what's happening right now is that we're seeing an explosion of the Hispanic population in the United States. And then if we add to that the fact that many of these individuals are going to struggle economically, and that they will have to find ways to get an education that will make them active members of our economy, we are dealing with a serious, serious challenge, and that's something that I actually lose sleep over. So we can see now the median household income in the United States for the Hispanic population. We're looking at about 25%. For the black population, we're looking at 27% of them living in poverty. And so those are numbers that are really, really keep close to our heart, because, you know, we just can't, as a nation, have an expectation that 1 out of 4 Hispanics or African Americans are living in poverty. We need to do something. And one of the arguments that I make is that, of course, higher education is a way to mobilize people socially so that they won't be struggling economically. You can look at the median income per household, and also there are significant issues there: $40,000 for Hispanics and $34,000 for Black. So that's very problematic, and we need to do something about that, because we are lagging very far behind the median the median average for the nation. So it is really, I think, time for change. We need to prepare for that. We need to look at ways that we can modify our higher education system so that it can be more democratic. What you are already noticing at your universities and community colleges is that the student profile is changing significantly. Many of our students are now first-generation college students. These are individuals whose parents can't really show them the rope of how to be successful in college. Our students have earned college credit, whether that is at a community college with the idea of transferring to a university, or perhaps not, perhaps just getting an associate's in science, or through an early college initiative where they're actually taking college credit while they're still pursuing their high school diploma. Many of them will have limited resources, having a job or looking for one, and being very proactive about that. At my university, we actually have a policy of hiring many of our students so that rather than working at Walmart, they will be working with us, and we want them to have as many enriching experiences as possible. But of course, there's a limit to what we can do. Many of our students are not seeking loans. I don't know if this appears to be strange, but our students do not like to get in debt. They definitely shy away from that. They will take a Pell Grant if they can, but they will not go and try to find additional sources of funding if it means that they're going to get in debt. When recently the El Paso Times published that at UTEP, the average debt was close to $30,000 after earning a college degree, the entire community was up in arms and say, how can that be? Well, $30,000 actually is not that much. But from their perspective, it's a lot of money, and this is something that they're not willing to change. Many of our students have a family or are working on one. And the large majority of them are commuters. And this is particularly true at our university. 98% of our students essentially commute every day to the university. So we see an influx of about 23,000 students coming in the morning and leaving in the evening. So it's significant. And you're going to start seeing, if you haven't seen this already, that more and more commuter students will be attempting to pursue a college degree, whether it's at the community college, a junior college, or a university. So there is change ahead for you if you're thinking about that. So our education system is starting to look like a subway. It is no longer the traditional idea that you might get a high school diploma and then move on to the university. Many students are now stopping. At the stop is community college, and then they move on to university. But some of them may not do that. Actually, some of them may actually get a college degree, a university degree, and then go to community college to get an associate's degree. So we're starting to see patterns that are rather different from what we might anticipate, because that's not our experience. Many of our students are now considering the possibility of going into early college. That is, that while they're pursuing their diploma, they're getting college degree. Most of this is typically run through a community college that is engaged with a school district and trying to make sure that many of those students who are considered at risk actually have an opportunity to get the college experience. And the commitment is such that many of these students are actually graduating, and we are now seeing in this next week, I'm about to hire somebody in the graduate school office who actually is starting a master's degree, and she is 19 years of age. So what you're going to start seeing is something quite crucial. I had a colleague in chemistry who gave me a phone call, and he says, I'm teaching organic chemistry, and I have a 16-year-old in my classroom. What do I do with that person? What do you do with that person? You might also see that many of our students have a life, and they intend to keep it. They may have gone to service, and they've been very loyal to the country. So it's time for us to make sure that they're successful in their education. So we are seeing more and more veterans joining our university ranks, and I'm very happy for that. But of course, there are very different type of student, and we need to make sure that we have the infrastructure that is supportive of their efforts. And then they either go to a community college or a university. So we have a really interesting subway approach here. Now, when we look at what are the possibilities that they're going to get a college degree, you can look at what has been happening through the nation over the last 5 decades. In the 1970s, approximately 37% of the degrees that were awarded to individuals who were in the top income quartile. That has changed dramatically. By the 1990s, that number had increased to 69.4%. So clearly, people from the highest quartile are taking advantage of higher education, and they're getting that education. But you can see what's happening here with the bottom income quartile. It has pretty much remained flat. You could argue that it's much better to have 8.7 than 6.6. However, I would argue that is not a significant increase. Even if you add the second lowest quartile of 15.1%, that's still very low. So clearly, there is an issue that needs to be addressed. There's a strong correlate between socioeconomic status and educational attainment, and that's the purpose of this particular chart. So with the subway model, the idea then is consider that profile and look at where the students are coming from, realize that many of these students are going to stop out. That does not mean that they're dropping out. It means that they're taking a break, and in their minds, they intend to come back. So issues like strong, proactive, or what some people call intrusive advising makes a lot of sense. Having an effort in that area is absolutely crucial. Our students are looking at the different stations. When they go from one station to another station, they will always be dealing with transitional issues. So we need to be able to provide some strategies for these individuals, because it is worth the time. That will guarantee their success. Advising time is essential. And another piece that we often forget is that we trying to treat our students like they're a clean slate, where in fact they bring a lot to the table. And that experience that they have from life is very important. How they have been successful in high school and in community colleges is also very important, and we need to validate those efforts. So when you see a community college student saying that they just joined the university, welcome them and tell them, good job, you've done great, and I'm sure that you're going to continue doing a greater effort, because ultimately what we want to make sure is that they all go to the Grand Central Station, right? So you can see with this cartoon here, one of the issues that we're changing is that the traditional model is no longer uh, what it used to be. We now have individuals who are going from the K-12 through the early college initiative. And for those of you who are not familiar with the early college, actually, when you take a college course in your high school or in your community college, you're actually earning credit for the university. So the number of credit hours that an individual will have to take at the university will be reduced by the same number of credit hours that were earned in high school. We see also what's happening between community colleges and universities, the strategy of the reverse transfer, where some students actually start taking courses at the community college and then they successfully transfer to the university. The university then goes back and tells them, you have earned enough credits here for your associate's degree. Don't worry about it. We're going to send that information back to your college and they will give you your diploma. So the strategies like that are very important. They're taking hold in Texas, and I'm sure that it's happening in your state. We just need to learn a little bit more about that. That also helps community colleges tremendously because they are measured, just like we are measured, by metrics such as success of students, that is, how many students are earning their degrees. So when we engage in that reverse transfer strategy, we actually saw a significant number of our students who had transferred to university to earn their associate's degree. We are also seeing efforts to move our students through their senior year into what we call the fast track. That's, again, fast track to the master's or to the doctoral degree, and again, that is dual credit in many instances. Universities that are trying this are actually identifying graduate courses that our undergraduates could take in their last year. So the individual will take this graduate course, earn credit as an undergraduate, and then if that student is accepted to graduate school, then they can turn around and they have already banked some graduate level courses, and then they can move faster through their masters. So that's happening, and of course everybody here is familiar with the Bridge to the Doctor, and this is an initiative that is not only being supported by NSF, but also NIH and other agencies, with the intent of getting more of our underrepresented minority students into the PhD. So if you're not familiar with how K-12 systems are being integrated nationwide or in your area, what I encourage you to do is to go talk to a professor in the College of Education. Okay? And that is not a joke. Okay. In Texas, what we are doing is we're working very hard to tune the K-16 system through regional collaboratives for excellence that include partnerships with the city, school districts, community colleges, and universities. We are, of course, fond of magnet schools because we can identify our best and brightest very early on, but that's not the only path. We are also moving forward with the idea of STEM academies and centers. These are high schools that have a stronger than usual STEM curriculum that prepares our students better for a college degree, pursuing a college degree in the STEM disciplines, and of course, as I mentioned before, early college, which happens in high school. So these are initiatives that are happening in Texas, and I also know that they're happening elsewhere in the nation. As far as collaboratives for academic excellence, I think this is one of the best strategies that our community engaged in, because we can work very hard at raising expectations and aspirations of all the family in the region, and for us that's crucial because, as I said before, many of our students don't really have someone to turn to and talk about college education and the issues that are encountering. As the chair of my department several years back, I would welcome phone calls from parents. And many of them were mothers who were concerned about their engineering daughters, engineering major daughters, and they were saying, how come they had to be working on this senior project until midnight? And I had to tell them, I assure you they're in the lab. I'm in the office at midnight, and I can tell you they're in the lab at midnight. and they have special concerns, and we need to be able to address them. Collaboratives typically respond to historically low educational attainments of youth, particularly in the URM. So, having such a association really makes a difference for the community, especially in universities benefit in particular because ultimately the effort is to make sure that these students will be pursuing college degrees. Through collaborative efforts, we have been able to get data, important data, about how our students are doing. This is a chart that shows what's been happening in Texas. You can see the first chart, that's the El Paso region, and you're looking at the first dark, I would say, well, the first column represents the district graduation rate. The second is for Hispanic Americans, the third one is for whites, and the last one is for African Americans. So you can see that in the El Paso region, the gap has really been closed, and we're very proud of that, of course. In other parts of Texas, the results are not as good. We still have a gap. For example, in Austin, the graduation rate from high school is very high for non-Hispanic whites, and it tends to be much lower for the other groups. The same thing happens in Houston. So, there are issues that we had to address within our states, but we're trying to make a difference. You can see in San Antonio, which is a very cosmopolitan area, they have significant problems in terms of graduation rates, and that's something they're working on. But the point of that chart in particular is that collaboratives actually do work. After our collaborative has been working for more than 20 years, so you would expect some good results. I'm going to spend a few more minutes talking about the democratization of higher education as an imperative. You may have heard this in terms of massification or access and excellence. These are terms that are used throughout the states to talk about opening the doors of higher education. President Obama's goal in particular was to make back the United States turn back into number one in terms of tertiary degree attainment, that is higher education attainment. For that purpose, we had to work on increasing higher education capacity. We had to work on increasing the number of degrees awarded by 50% with respect to the baseline of 2008. One message that is very clear, one lesson here is that it is absolutely insufficient just to identify talent. We really need to work on different approaches to identify talent and develop talent or nurture it, because that is going to be the key to our success. So President Obama essentially set a goal by 2020, America will once again have the highest proportion of college graduates in the world. So he said this in Congress back in 2009. Do you have an idea where we are? I'm going to show you where we are. Okay, we're number 12. Well, we were number 12 in 2008. Korea was number 1. Closely followed by Canada, Russia, Japan, New Zealand, Norway, Ireland, Denmark. Yes, I am going to say all these because I want you to feel the pain that I feel. Israel, Belgium, Australia, and then the US. So in order to get to around 60%, we need to essentially double our capacity, because from 40 to 60, that's a 50% increase. So we really need to increase our capacity. Many universities have taken this to heart, and they set goals saying that by 2020, our student population would be X, Y, or Z. And if you start thinking about what those numbers represent, it really represents a 50% increase in capacity. Okay, this is a slightly different chart that shows the percent of population ages 25 to 34 with a tertiary type A degree by country, and that means that they are getting their bachelor's degree. So if we only looked at the top half of our population, okay, top half, we would be number 1 in the world. Unfortunately, we don't just have a top half, right? So by the time that we look at the average, we're number 8, okay, in awarding college degrees. And the percentage is about 35%. If you look at the lower income half in the United States, that part of the population is number 36. Okay? Once again, socioeconomics plays a crucial role in degree attainment. And we need to make sure that our universities are open, of course, but to the lower income students, but also we need to find ways to make sure that they're going to be successful because they're a very different type of student. So what we are seeing throughout the nation is efforts to have what we call holistic support systems from pre-college to post-college. And there are essentially seven different approaches to this. The first one has to do with recruitment and transition initiatives, like the freshman year experience. What can we do with learning communities? What can we do with proactive or intrusive advising? Those type of initiatives. Looking at the student support, financial support, scholarships, jobs on campus. Those are terms, phrases that you are starting to hear more and more about. My favorite one is undergraduate research. Of course, the challenge with undergraduate research is how do you scale it up, right? We need to find ways to scale up because we know that students that are engaged in undergraduate research have a very high likelihood of earning college degrees and then also going on to graduate school. The question is, how do we scale it up? What can we do at the freshman level or at the sophomore level so that our students get an enriching experience that makes sense that we can call research? Faculty enhancement, whether that is helping them to become teachers. I used to have a provost who said that the only requirement to teach in higher education is to have a PhD. I hear you. Come over here. When we get a PhD, we are trained to do research, right? We are not necessarily being trained to teach, although we are seeing now that there's a change in the pattern, but it's not systematic. And making sure that our PhD graduates have a meaningful teaching experience, and they actually learn to what the best practices are. And a best practice is not teaching the way that I was taught. That is not a best practice, right? And we need to figure out ways to make sure that our students understand about collaborative learning, they understand about different active learning strategies, because if they do that, they're going to be much more efficient with their time. Curriculum development, of course, has become very important. Not because we really have made an earnest effort to change our curriculum, which has been stagnant pretty much since the 1960s, but rather because our state legislatures are telling you that we had to reduce the number of credit hours to earn a college degree. So we went from 136 credit hours to 128 down to 120. That's the norm in Texas, 120 credit hours. That is also the minimum number of college credits that is required by SACS, which is our accrediting agency. So it's the maximum and the minimum. It's the only number. And of course, schools of engineering in Texas have raised their arms in discontent, and we were given an exception, so we're at 128. But still, compared to when we graduated, the number seems to be a little bit on the low end, just a little. Physical infrastructure, of course, universities spending a lot of money on research buildings. We need more classroom buildings. Okay, we can argue about efficiencies of space usage, and that's something of interest at the system level, but at the local level, we know that we don't have enough classroom buildings. And of course, placing our students giving them advice on career placement, on pursuing graduate degrees. And this is something that the LSM Nation is actually engaged in. So I'm very proud that we lead that effort, because when I talk to deans from other colleges, I find out that they're probably about 20 years behind in this effort. So we lead the way, and we need to share that knowledge. Lastly, I will spend a few minutes, and I don't know how much time I have, Leroy. 5 minutes? Okay, I think I can do it. Okay, because I just want to tell you all, and I had heard a great presentation this morning. Actually, I heard two great presentations, one on community colleges and one on transitions to the university. The second one was from the University of Massachusetts, Boston, and the dean, who I believe is still around here, is extremely passionate about the work that he's doing. And I listened with interest as how he was talking about initially graduation rates and how concerned he is, and we all tend to be about graduation rates, but that's not the only metric. When we're dealing with the non-traditional student, we need to realize that many of these students are coming from the community college, so they're not going to necessarily be included in that graduation rate that we report to our systems and to the Department of Education. For instance, at UTEP, 70% of STEM graduates are not counted by this metric. They're not included like this metric, okay? 70 out of every 100 students that go through commencement are not counted. What does that mean? That means that that particular metric of the first-time, full-time fall entering student may be fine for the NCAA, okay? That's fine. Our athletes need to graduate on time, but so does everybody else. And everybody else may not have an athletic scholarship, and everybody else may not have access to an advising center or a tutoring center. So we need to emulate that, right? We need to find ways to make sure that. So FFF, which is first time, excludes community college transfers. Full-time excludes part-timers. Somebody that started with 9 credits will not be counted. And fall entering excludes spring and summer starters. So there's something wrong with that metric. What can we do? Well, we should follow a dashboard approach, of course, in looking at 1-year retention rates for cohorts, following students that after they've gone through pre-calculus or calculus. Enrollment, of course, is a good metric. Participation in enrichment experiences is also an important metric. STEM degrees awarded, we need to keep track of those numbers and make sure that they continue to go up. Time to degree, whether they're spending 8 years, 7 years, 6 years, 5 years, 4 years, or 3 years to degree, that's important. And of course, placement, where they end up placing. So lastly, I will tell you in a few words that education does pay, and this is a great incentive for our students to see a chart like this, when they can see that if they get a high school diploma, their median weekly earnings will be around $600, whereas if they actually get an associate's degree, that jumps up by 24%. If you go on to a bachelor's degree, that jumps to 65%. And then if you go on to pursue a graduate degree, whether that's a master's or a professional or a PhD, then you can see that the numbers increase quite substantially. And of course, that does say something about the possibilities of being out of a job. And the numbers tend to be very low if you have the highest possibility degree, the terminal degree, and it goes up significantly. So, in the El Paso area, we are always talking about our unemployment rate being close to 10 or 11%. But there's a very simple answer for that. Our students are not getting their high school diplomas. And that is something that we are actually working on and taking very seriously. So this is our summary, which is really the abstract. So you have a copy of that. I want to thank Dr. Steve Murdoch from Rice University, from the Hobby Center, who was very generous in providing some of the information that I share with you today. Dr. Natalicio, who's always been coaching me about how to share my story, and also Dr. Kim Nguyen and Leroy Jones. Thank you once again for the opportunity to allow me to speak to the folks here. And I'll be glad to entertain a couple questions. Yes.
I have a comment and a question. And the comment is this. Just 2 weeks ago, I was at the National Academy of Sciences for the convocation of this very important report. Research Universities and the Future of America has 10 recommendations. There was probably one Hispanic man there, and his name was Francisco Figueroa, who is the chancellor of the University of Texas A&M.
My
There
boss.
were 3 black people there. I happened to be one of them. We are not at the table. We have to get at the table. Now, you can go to the National Academy of Sciences and pull this report down, a PDF. This is the summary report. I can't give you all this. But I'm here to talk about it because one of the things they told us, we need to go out and become gospelers and disseminate what's in this report. But the last 3 recommendations refer to us in terms of STEM talent, international students, what they do. But I would encourage you all to read this 10-page document. We need to get on the bandwagon, folks. It's later than you think.
And your question?
Oh, my question.
Hey, we know each other. Don't worry.
My question was, I wanted to be able to get some of your data. It's very, very interesting. And one of the things that I noticed, for example, in some of your earlier slides, the low enrollment of Hispanics and blacks, in fact, in higher education. We should all see that as an important opportunity. And how do we now engage these people who are out of higher education? What do we do? What strategies? I think we need to come up with recommendations as to what are some of the strategies that we can actually develop to bring these students who are out there, we see them every day, out in jails and all that stuff. How do we bring them into the system?
Right, that is the $64,000 question, right? How do we make sure that our students, yes. And the idea here, of course, is to make sure that we understand, first of all, who these students are, that we are also engaged in the validation effort, because these individuals will go through the hardest transitions at the university. So we really need to make room for additional work in the transitional stages. Yes.
Two linked questions. In the backdrop of much discussion about graduate education and the professional aspects of merit in the United States, with the explosive rise of online degrees, one question, as the administrator at the graduate school, how does your institution feel about online graduate degrees? Second question, as PI of the LSM program, how do you feel through the lens of LSM about online graduate training?
The answer to the first question is ambivalent. I certainly realize that by having fully online programs that will be opening the doors to individuals who may otherwise not be able to commit to coming to the university unless we change our approach, that is teaching Friday nights, teaching Saturdays, and some faculty don't mind doing that, but they're not in the STEM disciplines, right? They're in education, they're in business, and they've done this for a number of years. Some faculty, some programs are typically used to working with cohorts of students. Again, that's not in the STEM disciplines. When I hear my colleague from health sciences talking about graduation rates of about 90%, I say, how do you do that? I say, well, one, they're very, very selective, and two, they also work in cohorts, so they have a close eye on that. So having programs, graduate programs online will make a difference, but we need to figure out how to make sure that we integrate that to the fabric of the rest of the university. And also that we have, I find it very interesting, how many computer scientists do we have in the room? Because I don't want to insult anybody. Okay, I am going to insult a couple people. Okay.
Can you keep it real brief because the buses need to leave? You can
The
finish.
bus is getting ready to leave, so I've been told, better wrap it up. So we need to get those people who are experts in cyberspace, we need them to get engaged, okay? And I'll be more than glad to talk to you all about the rest. But thank you once again for the opportunity, and make sure you catch the bus. Bye. No, that's okay. That's all right. My pleasure.